Welcome everybody to Creatives Grab Coffee. Today we're joined by Jeff from V Strategies based out of Calgary, Ontario.
Ontario,
what
Ontario, Kyrill?
Calgary, Ontario. See, take one is usually my best one, and then take two, it's like, what?
It's just all downhill from here.
Dario threw you off.
Yeah, it's the pressure, the pressure's on now.
Just staying in, by the way. I'm not going to edit this out.
I love it. Anyways, welcome everybody to Creatives Grab Coffee. We're joined by Jeff. Oh my God, wow. Dario really has messed me up at this point. What is this?
Don't you just love this? We're usually on the other side of the camera, and it's like, it's easy. Don't worry. Just do the video until you, I'm with you.
Like I said, Kyrill, this is all that we're going straight into it. He's from Calgary, Ontario at this point. We're continuing.
Calgary, Ontario. That's what it is. All right. Jeff, how about you give us a little bit of a background on who you are, who is V Strategies, and the type of work that you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me on. I mean, so V Strategies, I started the company going on 26 years ago. I used to be with CTV prior to starting the company, and I sold advertising there. Always had an entrepreneurial bug. So we've been in business, like I said, just over coming up to 26 years. Do full service video production. We changed our name. We used to be Zoom Communications when we started. We changed it to V Strategies about 8-9 years ago. And the reason for the V Strategies is really about visual strategies. And we just found that it was more than just producing videos. It was about creating strategies for clients, which, I know you guys are doing, a lot of people are doing these days. So there's more to it than just producing a video and giving it back to a client. So we do a lot of corporate work. We do TV commercials. We used to do a bunch of broadcast work, but these days it's primarily corporate stuff for online distribution.
So be honest with us. Did you sell the name to Zoom? Is that what?
No, funny story with that is that, so we used to be Zoom Communications. There also used to be a Toronto company called Zoom Media, which were the bathroom ad guys. So they did the urinal ads. And there was a Jeff that worked over there in Calgary. So we would always get these ads and people wanted to put ads up over top of urinals. And I was like, no, that's not us. We're not in the crapper yet. And so we would swap phone numbers and back and forth. Anyways, it was just kind of that. And it was just the change in the marketplace that we just found the timing was right. So the change to V from Zoom, but you're right. I should have kept the rights to it or I should have came up with a conferencing solution like this. It would have been more financially beneficial.
You should have just held on to the domain name and then sold it to them.
Yeah, okay. No kidding.
I've always been curious is like all these ads that are in the bathrooms these days, who actually makes these ads? It's like it was like at the back of my mind one time. I was thinking to myself, is there like a company that specializes in this? Is this like a niche that all they do is bathroom videos? Bathroom ads.
I know it's a big market. It's surprising. I mean, the Zoom Media, I think they end up getting sold. I'm not sure if they're even around, but I mean, yeah, it's a big business.
Well, look, everyone needs a bathroom. That's a lot of urinals at the end of the day.
a lot of foot traffic as they go through there,
And you have to watch it. What else? You can't skip the ad, right?
That's right.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? Like, go and press.
You got their attention for exactly 1 minute at the most.
Yeah, you have no chance of skipping that ad. That's actually brilliant when you think about it.
It's like those TV ads where it's like. If you're reading this ad, you're stuck in traffic, but
that's right.
You're reading this ad
right.
in the washroom.
Yeah, it works.
Oh man.
So Jeff, 26 years, like almost a quarter of a century. That's a long time, right?
You know what it is. It's crazy amount of time. And it's funny because a lot of the young folks that work with us and work for us and everything. I mean, I started back in the day when CTV was still reel-to-reel editing. The hardware that we used was crazy big, heavy cameras. The first camera we bought was a Betacam SP camera. I think we paid about $90,000 for the camera, another $40,000 for the lens. And as we all know, our phones these days record, footage that's 100 times better. Same thing. Our first edit suite we bought was an Avid edit suite, and I think we paid about $300,000 to get that edit suite put in.
For an editing suite.
Yeah, we still have a deck downstairs, an HD cam deck that I think we paid $90,000 for that is totally useless. these
You
days.
still have it because you spent the money, you know.
You got nothing to do with it. I'll put it into a museum.
I wonder how much you get on eBay for that. I wonder.
I've tried eBay. I can't even get any money on eBay for it. So I figured I might as well just keep it. So yeah, so I mean, I think it's interesting how it's changed over the years for sure. I've seen a lot of changes.
I can only imagine. Like, actually, funny story about buying expensive stuff that you look back on now and it's pretty much worthless. We had the same kind of thing happen with 360 video. So we got into it just before it became hyped up, or it was in the process of becoming hyped up just before it
in
died.
early 2016. It was right in early 2016.
We blew, like, at the time it was like 15K, which doesn't sound like much compared to your $300,000 editing suite, but for us at the time starting out, that was a lot of money. You know,
percentage wise, yes, to be honest, you know, like if you're making like 50 to 100K a year, 300,000 is what, an extra 66% on top of that. Whereas like with us, we were making only like a certain amount, where like 15,000 was a huge dent in our in our bank account.
I still remember.
Well, you know what, and it's sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I still remember going to Vistec and saying, yeah, so we want to get 6 GoPro Hero 4s and paying the $4,000 for those. I was like, ooh, this one stings a little.
Mind you, we were just out of school at that point. So.
Well, you know what though, it's interesting though, because that's the funny thing about these days, and it's, you know, maybe it's something to talk about is, you guys have an agenda here, so but you know, when we got into the business, when I got into the business, there was only 3-4 bigger production companies. And the reason being is because the technology, like, it was so expensive. And so, you know, we took loans out and, you know, we took a big risk in investing the money into the equipment, but that gave us an edge because not everybody could get into the business. So as the technology started to change, and as we were going to the NAB shows in Vegas every year, and we started to see all this DSLR technology, I remember we bought the first versions of the GoPros and we're going, oh my God, like, we're done, because everybody can buy this equipment, and we are totally out of the business because our advantage of having this expensive equipment had kind of been lost. And the interesting thing about it is what we found is that, and I remember this in a real quick story, but I remember watching a photographer who was a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model photographer. And this guy had these great big thick glasses, and he would shoot all of the photos on this little Instamatic 35mm camera. And the whole story was about everybody else has these great big cameras and these great big lenses, and how could this guy be a professional photographer because he had such bad eyes? And he says, it's not the equipment, it's who's behind the equipment. So you can give anybody a camera, it doesn't mean they can produce great quality video. And so that was one of the things that kind of I remind myself, when the technology got cheap, it didn't matter. You still had to have the people like the 3 of us behind the technology to make it work. So it's just an interesting transition over the years.
Yeah, it went basically from the value of having the equipment was the big selling factor for a lot of companies, to it becoming how are you creating the content? Like, what is the content that you're filming at this point? Because as you said, anyone can buy a camera these days and just kind of jump right into it, but it's the experience and the strategy, mind you, that goes behind that goes into the videos that really makes the quality what it is these days, right? How did you cope with that evolution? Because like for us, we basically just kind of like grew with the growth, whereas you went from like the previous type of work that you did, and then you had to evolve it over time. So how was that transition for you?
Well, you know what, it's one of those things. I've always, you know, I'm a little bit older than you guys. I'm into my 50s. And a lot of people have this mentality of, oh, I don't understand that new technology, or it's too confusing. I remember even guys going, you know what, I'm not going to stop shooting film. These HD cameras, this DSLR crap won't catch on. I've never thought of it that way. I'm constantly curious about new technology and what's coming out, even though I'm maybe an older guy. I think that to succeed, you got to stay curious and learn about the new technology, so that you can stay current. And that's what we did. We you know, I learned all the new technology, stayed up with it. You know, I used to be a partner in a company here in Calgary that's doing great. Mammoth XR, they do VR and AR stuff. I learned the technology. So that's how we adapted. We went, great, let's take these DSLRs, let's take these GoPros, let's learn how we can use them, how we can adapt them, and use our old school knowledge of storytelling and distribution of content with these new tools that we have. So, we've made lots of mistakes. You know, you guys said you put some money into the 360 stuff. I mean, I dumped a ton of money into streaming. We started a streaming company in 1999 called Jetstream Digital Media. This was when most people still had 56 dial-up modems, none of this high-speed crap, you know. And we were trying to send video signals over these 56K dial-up modems, and that's how like a guy like Mark Cuban got his start, right? With broadcast.com. He got into the streaming business. He sold out at a really good time, and obviously now a billionaire. But so we spent a lot of money on technology, made a lot of mistakes, but you just keep learning and keep adapting and keep driving forward. And, you know, here we are 25 years later, and, you know, still going strong and looking ahead as to what else is new and what kind of technology can we tap into to bring to our clients.
Yeah, we talk a lot about technology, but I feel like nowadays it's the barriers to entry are so low, anyone can pretty much enter it, but the strategy part is the one that really matters. And a lot of the companies we've been talking to on this show, they're always reiterating that point, how they're trying to be very strategic with their clients in terms of the content they create for them, right? I'm just curious to, like, I mean, you've been in this industry for so long. I'm just curious as to what you've seen change on that end, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You guys are bang on, and I think that's the critical part of it. I mean, we've had a tagline we've used for a lot of years called "Story first, medium second," and the meaning behind that is that if you can tell a good story, it doesn't matter. Every medium works, whether it's print, you know, web, video, everything works. Even coupons, you know, if you're advertising, everything works. It's just a matter of the story you tell. And I think the problem being is with video guys like us, visual guys, animation guys, is that we're a bit of an afterthought. So a lot of the agencies will go and develop these campaigns, and they'll develop, you know, the strategies and the key messaging, and we tend to be a little bit of an afterthought. And we kind of, you know, we always say that guys like us need a position at the big kids table. So when you've got your ad agency or your PR firm or your digital agency coming up with the strategies, the visual guys should be there as well. We should be at the table talking about the strategy for, you know, the content development, the stories you're developing, and then how you're going to distribute that content. And that's where I think it's changed, and that's where that strategy comes in, is because we're generally better off knowing new platforms like TikTok or Reels or anything else, and how the content needs to be produced, or pre-roll ads. And so why aren't we at that table coming up with the strategy? And so a lot of agencies don't like us being at the table because they'd rather put us in the corner and tell us what, you know, what they need. You know, we don't deal with a lot of agencies. We're happy to deal with agencies. We love working with agencies, but not if they're going to put us in the corner and, you know, kind of control us and let us speak when it's our turn. We'd rather be at the table and say, no, here's some ideas as to how we can integrate, you know, your video into your overall, you know, whether it's a marketing campaign or a corporate communications campaign.
Well, did you you mentioned that you don't work with agencies too much, but like, was there like a period where you did kind of work with them quite a bit, where you kind of like started to see like the importance of being at that at as you say, like at what point did you realize that how key that was?
Well, we didn't purposely not work with what I found with the agencies is that there's probably a few incidences, maybe 10, 15 years ago, that, you know, where one specifically, we had a corporate client come to us directly and ask us to produce a video. We gave them a quote. I don't know, it was $35,000 or something, because it was a bigger project. They said, oh, we're going to get our agency involved. They got the agency involved. The agency came back and said, great, we want to do this creative, which was our creative. And they said, we have $8,000 for production. And I kind of went, wait a minute, how did it go from a $35,000 budget to $8,000? They're like, well, we need to put, you know, we need our markup and we need our spin and everything. I was just kind of like, wait a minute, how are we supposed to produce? So we were expected to produce the same quality work for, you know, less than a third of the budget. And I went back to the client directly. I said, you know, this is what's happening. This is ridiculous. And the agency didn't like that. And no, we haven't worked with that age. I don't even think they're around anymore.
Oh,
All right.
with business practices like that, I'm not surprised, to be honest.
Well, yeah, and I'm not. And so for us, we do work with agencies, and we're happy to work with agencies, but we want to make sure that, again, everything's up front, and we're able to provide some value and bring our expertise to the table. So again, we do work with agencies. It's just we don't work. There's other companies in town that rely heavily on agency work. We tend to work with clients direct. We just have a better result doing that.
Yeah, I've always wondered this new direction our industry is going in, where because we have to develop all these strategies, or we do like to implement a bit of strategy into the content we produce for our clients. It feels like we're walking this fine line between, we're a video production company that can create your video and help you with a bit of strategy, but we're not really a marketing agency. So it's like we're kind of dipping our toes a little bit over there. So it's this like weird transition, I guess everyone is kind of going into, where we're kind of like mostly video, but with a little bit of marketing expertise thrown in there, right? And then it seems a little weird because if you do start to offer marketing services, then you kind of become something else entirely, right? Now you're in a different pond.
Well, part of it, Dario, is also that a lot of clients and a lot of companies essentially have they have their own marketing teams, and more is being asked of them these days compared to what it used to be. It used to be believed that you have to go to the agency, get them to create a brief, do this, do that, do this, do that. But now a lot of companies are starting to have bigger and more capable marketing teams with their own graphic designers, their own copywriters, like their whole team. And so that's why they are kind of like creating that bigger creative at this point, and then bringing us in to kind of give our input. So there's that kind of collaborative effort I've noticed, where the agency's role has kind of almost been like split into two, where like one goes to the client and then the other half goes to the video production company. At least that's what I've seen so far.
Well, and I think that, and that's a great point. I think it's knowing where our limitations are. The agencies that we work with, these are brilliant people that they know strategy, from an overall communication strategy. They know print design much better. They can tie it all together. Nothing but respect for them. We know how far we can go down that line before, you're right, where it kind of gets confusing. But I also think the other thing too is that it's about everybody fighting for this piece of pie. A lot of the agencies now are taking their graphic designers and now offering, video production services, and they're doing explainers in-house, because somebody who knows Photoshop and Illustrator can get into After Effects and start creating. And so all of a sudden, because they're going, well, if we can keep part of this budget. So it's all about this fighting over the budget. And our belief is it's not about fighting over the budget, it's about providing the client with a solution where you grow that pie. So we all get more money, right? We can all take our fair share. When you got to start kind of going, well, no, we'll do the marketing strategy, even though we don't know how to do it, just because we want to get an extra, 20% on the budget. Well, I think that's you're going to run into some problems there potentially, unless you have the skill set to do it.
Yeah, I like what you mentioned about like how everyone's trying to fight for budgets typically, but you did mention also like, sometimes you want to try to elevate that budget, based on the value that this project is going to give the client. And I've noticed that too, where sometimes like a client may have like a certain budget in mind for a project, but they haven't really thought about what value this project might give to them. And then once we kind of talk to them, figure out the solution, as you mentioned, that suits them, they might see the bigger value in it and then realize, oh, we might need to pull in more funding so that we might be able to bring in this team and this team and this team. And then because of that, like there's going to be a much larger value at this point for this project. So we got to bring in more money. So budgets are not always set, as long as you can communicate the right solution and the right value, then, the sky's the limit at that point, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's everybody's job at the table, whether it's the agency, the video producer, whoever it is, the PR firm. It's about making sure, whatever we can do, if it's a client that's selling some widget, if we can increase their sales, where they're going to have more budget for us. If we can increase their sales tenfold, they're just going to keep coming back. I always joke with clients too, I always say, you know what, I can't retire off your one video project. I need multiple projects over the years. So I have a vested interest in seeing you succeed, because the more I can help you succeed, the more money you're going to spend with me. You know, $100,000 video project isn't retirement money. And so that's just, you know, we're pretty open about that. And it really is about helping the client to achieve those goals. And again, even internal communications, if it's about getting more engagement from your employees, or, you know, getting more engagement from shareholders. I mean, all of that stuff, there's got to be that ROI on it to justify the money they're spending. Because some of the stuff we do isn't cheap. You know, there's cost to it. I think that's a whole other topic as well, as just the cost and the value of what we provide. A lot of people don't understand, you know, we get it all the time, you know, where they say, well, I got somebody who can do it for a quarter of that price. Great, but generally you're not comparing apples to apples.
It's like, sure, go ahead.
And there's always someone that can do it cheaper, you know?
Yeah. And that's when we say, if they can do it for you cheaper, by all means, go to them. It's like, you know, like we can't do it for less, you know, to the best of our abilities. You know, it's like sometimes asking, it's like going to a restaurant, asking for a sandwich and then saying, oh, sorry, but I only have this much money. It's like, okay, let's take off the bread. Let's take off the meat. There's a salad, you know, that's essentially what that kind of negotiating is at this point, right? It's like, I can't give you the whole sandwich. We only have $2 for it, you know?
Yeah. And even some of the things, we're seeing that even when it comes to the explainer videos and animation stuff, you know, we're getting people going, oh, well, I found this site online that, you know, I can get it done overseas for, you know, $300. I'm like, go for it. Like, you know, good luck. And we've had clients that have tried things like that, and they've come back to us and said, okay, yeah, you know,
Didn't work.
you guys returned our phone calls, and, you know, so.
Now they spent an extra $300. That's the thing. It became more expensive doing that. So you can go test it out, sure, but it's going to cost you more doing that. And especially time. That's the biggest thing. All that time and opportunity cost wasted going down the cheap road, because those are always like the ones that go even much longer than usual as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That must be very humbling for a client to come back though and say like, yeah, it didn't work. Because we actually had a guest a show or two ago, and they were talking about how they do follow-ups with clients that do want to do that route, just to see if they actually did end up going that way and if it worked out or not. And like they if they say no, they'll tend to go back with them. But I'm just curious, do that too, or do you just wait until
you know what? We've never really followed up. I mean, generally, because it's not our regular clients. Usually it's a random phone call. Somebody calls us and says, I want to do this, and, you know, I can get it done for $300. We did have a couple of clients years ago, and it was more on, we had one with animation. They just came back and they just blatantly said, yeah, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have done that. Some of it too is even with some of the streaming stuff we did years ago with guys found, you know, cheaper solutions for streaming, and they came back and said, yeah, you know, we didn't realize how difficult it was. You know,
streaming especially, that's something we're always scared to do, because it's like,
yeah,
there's so many things that can go wrong with streaming. It's a stressful type of,
because it's not in our control. That's the biggest thing. The good thing about our job is that most of the things we do are within our control, which is why we're very certain of what is and what isn't needed. When it comes to streaming though, how is the location's internet service is always the first question that is asked. It's how strong is that? Because that's something that's just not in our control typically. And anytime we get requests for streaming, like if it's something much on a smaller scale, we try to take it on, of course. But if it's something that needs something with much more manpower, then we just send it off to like people in our network, because that they're the experts, you know, like as to your point, you got to bring in people that are experts in their respective fields for this.
Well, and the streaming side, I mean, streaming it's live television, right? And when things go wrong, and I think the Russian government found that out a couple of days ago when that editor ran onto the screen. I don't know if you guys saw that or not, but
I didn't see this
with the sign. Yeah. Editor ran on and said, "Don't believe this propaganda," and I think she's been arrested. But you know, that's live television, and so when something goes down, you got to react. And unfortunately, with the streaming stuff, so we're doing a project right now for a client where they did it live last year, and it went okay, but it didn't go great. they had some delays, they had some hiccups. So what we're doing this year is we're pre-recording a 90-minute show. It's kind of a simulated live. We're setting it up as if it's going to be live, but it's all going to be pre-packaged. We're going to be able to test it in advance. When the time comes, we hit play, it'll be seamless, as opposed to, the risk of, like you say, local internet, the bandwidth in the building you're in crapping out on you.
That's a great solution, especially unless it's a newscast. I've always wondered why a lot of people, or like a major event, of course.
Even newscasts, I've always wondered why they don't just shoot it, like, I don't know, 3 hours before it airs. Like,
that's more work for them. That's why. You know how much work they have to do as a newscast? Like, I've heard of situations where they basically have to edit something within 30 minutes to get put on the show, but like, I get it for newscasts, but like for something like you just mentioned, Jeff, that you pre-record it, it's perfect, you get it done exactly the way you want, and then you just simply stream it live. Like, I feel like that's the right approach for anything that isn't like a once in a lifetime, obviously, event, like a conference, or if it's a newscast or something like that. I think those are the only ones where it kind of warrants that. Otherwise, that's the best approach.
Yeah. And even the one we're doing, we're doing some of the recordings of some of the speakers kind of closer to the date. So if there's anything that happens in the world that's going to impact, their business, they'll still be able to provide an update. But so they'll do that. And then what they have is they're going to have a live chat at the end of it, so they can take any questions and address any questions, but it's not going to be a live video feed. It'll be more of a, an online interaction chat session. So, and again, that's just us having that experience. And like you guys, we've had so many webcasts go down on us. We avoid live, at all costs. We have done some of them. We've had some good success, but it makes me nervous every time.
Yeah, no matter how much experience you have, there's still a margin for error, not from you, as I mentioned before, external factors. That's just the nature of the game. And that's why anytime people ask any production company, how are you guys about live streaming? And it's just like, we're always going first. Okay, all right, let's figure this out.
Yeah. So Jeff, again, since you've been in the industry for 26 years, I'm just wondering, in terms of the clients or leads that you've the difference in leads that you've seen over the years, because we have seen, I mean, obviously, like, nowadays everybody is doing video for their businesses, right? Versus like back then, I can only imagine, due to, again, because it was a high barrier to entry for a lot of companies, the prices for regular videos must have been a lot higher than probably what they are today for the same type of video. So now that the prices are a lot lower, I'm just wondering what kind of transition you've seen in terms of the leads that approach you for content.
We are generally dealing with kind of mid to large companies, and that's how we've differentiated ourselves in the market a little bit. We're structured to work with larger companies. So when we get smaller companies that come in and are looking for production work, they generally have smaller budgets, which is totally cool. But we have other groups that we can kind of pass them off to. We tend to be more structured, even though, so I guess what we're doing is we're still going after that mid to large size company, and we're doing more videos. So the cost per video is coming down. Whereas years ago, we might spend, $100,000, $200,000 on one corporate video. Well, now we're stretching that same budget into 50 videos, throughout a year. And again, we're just getting more creative with it. So, we still get the calls, but we always, we try and qualify the leads so that we don't bring, if somebody's got, $1,000 budget and they want a, 5-minute corporate video with multiple locations, we're just not the right guys to do it. There might be some other people out there, or we try and explain to them the costs and what's involved in it. But I would say our business, I mean, we don't get a lot of incoming inquiries. We're going out to get the business. We know who the customers are. That's the one. I mean, my background, I'm not a video guy. I started in advertising sales at CTV. And so I don't have a production background. I just learned everything over the years and being in the television side of things. And so I've always been big on the fact that in any business, doesn't matter whether you're a production business or an accountant or anything, I think you need to be constantly out, pounding the pavement, looking for new prospects, coming up with new offerings, reinforcing the value that you provide to clients in the marketplace.
Yeah, the sales process is definitely very important. I think luckily nowadays we do have other means of getting leads. I've always been curious about the sales approach though, because I feel like it's a little tricky for our industry because you aren't selling I mean, we are selling a product, but it's all so specialized at times. So I'm kind of wondering how you go about your sales process.
Well, for us, again, because we kind of have defined our market, we either have, marketing, advertising people within companies, depending on the type of company they have, or we're going after the corporate communicators. So, we use things like LinkedIn, we network, because we've been in the business for so many years, we have a pretty good sense as to kind of who's in the market. And it's constantly touching base with people, letting them know that you're there, feeding them new ideas. We have a blog site called Think Visual on our website. If you guys get a chance to check it out, we started this about 6-7 years ago. And Think Visual was just, great campaigns, videos that our team finds online, and we just share it. And it's no secret. We're not positioning it as our work. We're just saying this is great video content we found online. And we use that to share with clients to say, here, use this as some inspiration, here's some ideas as to what some of the top production companies around the world are producing for clients. And so we use that as just kind of giving them ideas. So it's not a hardcore sales, press hard 3 copies, sign now kind of a sales approach. It's just constantly being out there and providing them with value and ideas, and giving them ways that they can use video and animation to improve their marketing or their communications.
Mm-hmm. Lately, we've been focusing a lot on like advertising on Google, like Google AdWords, a lot of SEO, and we've like the main way we get our clients is through either like our website, like they just find us, or through referrals. Like it's mostly, for us, it started out a lot as referrals, and now it's transitioned to more leads from our ads or just from Google. But sales is definitely something I think we need to start thinking about. But it's like, yeah, we're still trying to nail that one in.
It's an ongoing process essentially. And what I was actually a little bit curious about, you said that you do a lot of outreach yourself, and you said you have a very good sense of what the market is like and who might be looking for video content these days. Is that maybe potentially a reason because of like how big maybe necessarily the Calgary market is for this kind of work, or is it kind of like almost comparable? Obviously, it may not be comparable to Toronto, but is it kind of like to a level where like you have a much like more in-depth knowledge of like the entire market that's there, like personally?
I would say, yeah. I mean, Calgary's not a huge market when you compare it to a Toronto or even a Vancouver. I mean, we're a bit smaller, but I still even think in a Toronto or a Vancouver, larger markets, or even some of the smaller markets, if you're in a Red Deer or a Lethbridge, I think it's just about trying to identify, the people that have a need to communicate, whether it's to, employees, investors, to customers, and really just giving them ideas as to how they can use video. Anybody, I always say that, everybody has a message to communicate, everybody has an audience. So if you're a company that has, 500 employees, well, you need to recruit people, you need to train people, you need to get, town hall meeting messages out there. You have all this stuff. And so we're just out there saying, well, here's a way you can do it with video. If you're trying to sell a product, well, how about an explainer video, or how about some pre-roll ads for YouTube, or how about, a video for your email signature, so that, when you're sending all those emails out, people can actually log in and see what you do. So it's giving people ideas. And so I have a pretty good sense as to who's in the Calgary market, but there's also a lot of companies we don't know, but that's where we're constantly prospecting. We're constantly reaching out. We're scanning LinkedIn to find out who the communications VP is, and then trying to figure out how to get some information in their hands. We just did a video that we talked about, we by far have probably interviewed the most number of senior executives in the city over the years, hundreds and hundreds of senior executives. And so we just did a short video and said, we know how to interview people. We know how to deal with senior executives. We know how to make them feel comfortable. We know how to, make them look good on camera. And we take that video and we're blasting it out to probably 400 or 500 prospects to say, if you're doing videos with your senior executives, we're the guys that know how to do it. so again, just getting creative and, you know, building trust with, you know, existing clients and prospective clients.
Do you find any challenges, like, or at least what are some of the challenges that you might face when you are trying to kind of reach out to them? Do you get a lot of kind of pushback, you know, especially with cold outreach, you know, feels like sometimes 95% of the time it's like, oh, thank you for reaching out, or not even an answer at all whatsoever, right? So like, how do you kind of like navigate that or even push past that to kind of get those sales?
Well, funny, real funny story. I got a 19-year-old daughter who's looking for a job right now. And she says, Dad, I can't find a job. I said, how many resumes have you sent out? She says, 4. And I was like, okay, there's the problem. She goes, well, I had 2 interviews and I didn't get the job. I said, there's the problem. People are so afraid of rejection, you know, and again, I started in sales. I'll send out this video to 400 people, and if nobody gets back to me, I don't lose any sleep over it. And I'm respectful. I'm not a pushy sales guy. I'm just like, well, obviously it wasn't of interest to them, so I'll come up with another idea 3 or 4 months from now and reach out to another 400 people. And I think so many people that get into business, and I don't know what your guys' backgrounds are, but people get into, especially the video business, they come out of broadcast school or they go to a film school and they come out and they love their craft. They're great at their craft. They love the business. They start a production company and they don't put enough emphasis on learning how to sell their product, or they're nervous about selling. Everybody's going, oh, I don't want to be a salesman. You know, there's that old, you know, perception of sales is slimy. It's not. It's about we're providing solutions to businesses to help them, like I say, communicate, to sell more product. We're not forcing anything on anybody. And I think that's where a lot of, you know, so we get pushback, we get ignored all the time. Every once in a while I get an email and somebody say, don't ever send me, you know, any information again. That's fine. I don't care. There's a million other people out there I can talk to. I don't care about that one individual who's grumpy. And so we just keep plowing through it and we keep reaching out to people but we're not pushy either. You know, we're not trying to force anybody into anything. We're just saying, look, we provide a great service here. We have great solutions. If you have a need to, you know, communicate with customers, employees, investors, here's some solutions that could help. And we get, you know, that's really what has allowed us to succeed and stay in business over the years, is that just not being afraid of rejection and just constantly pushing.
Jeff, how big is your team? So you started the company. Do you have any partners?
No, I started the company. I had a partner in the first year I bought him out. I'm the sole owner. We were up back 6-7 years ago. We were up to close to 30 people. 2015 here in Calgary, when the energy industry started to tank, we started to pare back a bit, and we were down to about 15 people pre-COVID. When COVID hit, we unfortunately let go of half of our team, just because we knew it was going to be, you know, a downside. So we're now 8-9 full-time people, but then we're using a lot of the people that we unfortunately laid off. We're using a lot of them on a freelance basis. So we have anywhere from 20 plus people kind of going at all times. And I got to be honest, like, you know, having a smaller team and using freelance is actually a bit of a relief, because, you know, when you've got 20-30 people on the payroll, there's a lot of pressure, you know, every month just to keep cranking the cash out just so you can break even. And as a business owner, at the end of the month, you're sitting there going, oh, I hope I made something. You know, so it's been scaled back, but we're, like I say, the market's starting to come back now. We're starting to feel, you know, even just since January, COVID seems to be passing and it seems to start to level out a little bit. In Calgary here, the $130 a barrel oil helps the market for us guys. So hopefully we can start to kind of build that team back up. I don't think we'll ever get back up to that size again, just not because we won't have the work. It's just because I just think we like to be a little bit leaner and meaner.
Yeah, that definitely seems like to be the trend with a lot of companies, because Dario and I have been talking for years about how we can potentially kind of scale up, because we can't be just the two of us like full time forever necessarily. You know, we're trying to figure out what might be some like good roles to kind of first bring in down the road, because like we're a very similar situation. You know, we're a nimble team, just the two of us right now as the core, and we have like 10 or so freelancers that we're working with on a consistent basis, depending on obviously the projects. But if you were to, well, what was like the first kind of hire that you found was like the most beneficial to you when you were trying to scale up? Like, what was the first thing that was on your list to do, or did you learn was the right one to do?
Yeah, there's probably not one person. There's probably two or three. And to me, in our business, you know, the where you make your money are the people that are billable. I'm not billable. I mean, I kind of am, but I mean, I'm not really. But you know, when you've got a great animator, shooter, you know, editor on staff that can crank out some amazing work, and you can keep them billing. You know, when we were, you know, to the size that we were when we were larger, you know, we had, you know, a team of 6 or 7 editing, and we had a couple of shooters, and that was good. So that was critical. But I also think having somebody from you know, a management side of things. I've got Jamie that works with me. She's been with me for 17 years, you know, and being able to coordinate and keep all the details in line, because I'm not a detail guy. I'm the big picture guy. And I come back and go, oh, let's do this for a client. And I throw out these crazy ideas, and then I come back and it's people like Jamie who put all the pieces together and go, Christ, how do we do this? You know, but then make things happen and keep it organized. So it's kind of twofold. There wasn't really one hire. I think it's a matter of, you just got to get those complementary people, you know. So I'm always out. I've always been out selling the projects and coming up with the ideas and building the relationships. I bring it back, and then I just have that trust in the team that they're going to be able to pull off whatever crazy idea I talk to a client about. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to ask, do you still direct a lot of your projects, or do you just kind of like run the business?
Yeah, I've never directed. I mean, I have directed, and I would say, you know, even though I'm not trained, I didn't go to film, so I don't actually have any post-secondary.
I meant like directing, producing. So like, are you on set at all for your projects, or?
Not very often. No, I like I say, my main background in the business has been running the business. I'm involved in the creative and the strategic side of things with clients, but we have directors and producers that actually do the work, and pull the projects off. So like I say, I have no formal training. I came out of high school and I got a job as a sales guy and just kind of fell into the TV business. So I know I could direct, and I have directed the odd thing, but I wouldn't call myself a director. I've more taken the role, I guess, of an executive producer, while I'll sit back and, you know, but I'm also very critical. I'm critical to the work we're doing, and I know what looks good and what doesn't. And, you know, just from years of being in the business.
When you were first starting out though, were you like, you were probably like on like you were producing, directing then, right? And then you transitioned to just being behind the scenes?
Yeah, no, again, I came out of selling advertising for CTV. The guy that I partnered with first off, he was a producer director, more of a producer, less of a director. We were partnered for the first year. He didn't like the idea of being in business for himself. He couldn't handle the stress. So I bought him out, and then I hired 2 producers, and then we were freelance directing everything for the first 4 or 5 years. So again, I was always on the street generating the business, and I'd bring it back. And again, I've been on set lots, but I'm not, I hire people for that.
Essentially, you're like just you're managing different teams of people depending on the projects. It's like, here's like 3 projects running at the same time. I'm going to put so and so and so each running each of those projects. They build you allocate the team and the people there. The thing I'm curious about though is you mentioned you're also dealing with a lot of the creative with the clients. So because you're doing that and then you're kind of handing it off to the team, I guess obviously it's because you've had like many years of working with them that you know what kind of work they would produce. But like typically with us, whenever we're dealing with the creative, we're kind of seeing it through all the way to the end. How do you kind of maintain that quality, or like, you know, that the director understands your vision, you know, as it goes along? Is like, how do you manage that relationship between you and the director?
Again, I know our directors and kind of the skill sets that they have and who's good at what. And so when I'm in talking to a client, you know, depending on the path we go down, will result in the director that we'll recommend bringing in for the project. I work so closely with the directors. When I come in and say, hey, we're looking to do this kind of a concept for the client, it's not much of a stretch for them because I already know their strengths. So I don't, if it's something, really out of scope, if it's some, crazy comedy piece or something really out there, I won't go too far down the creative path with the client without bringing our team in. And then it's a collaborative effort. Even, I always believe, I don't believe there's just, there are some amazing directors out there and amazing creative people, but I still think even the most creative people still rely on people around them to really fine tune their ideas. So it's more of a team effort.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of curious about.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We haven't run into another video production company that's being run like yours is being run. So, but it makes so much sense because yeah, like eventually the goal would be to get to the stage that you are in, right? Where you're running the business, you're doing the sales, you're handling part of the pre-production, and then you're overseeing the post, but you're not going to set because it doesn't make sense for you to go set when you got to run everything else, right? It's almost like I'm thinking in my head, like if you own a movie studio, you're not going to go all 30 days of the production shoot day. You're not going to be on set with the director and everything. You got to run the studio, right? You got a whole bunch of stuff to worry about.
Generate business.
And that's a challenge that a lot of people in the industry have. And like for you guys, you go sell a project with the client, then you got to come up with the creative, then you go on set. Well, that might take you out of the sales cycle for 2 months. And you see it that you're out of the sales cycle for 2 months, and then that project wraps up and you're like, oh crap, we need another project. So now you got to spend another month to get another project. And so if you can start to step back a little bit and bring some people in. So for you guys, maybe you get, a great production assistant who can do a lot of the legwork for you. So while you're coming up with the creative and you're actually going to be on set, maybe a lot of that other stuff you get somebody else to do, and you're looking for the next job while you're waiting for the upcoming shoot, so you can start to build on it. So that is, we are quite unique. I mean, I've got a good buddy of mine that we're actually kind of competing companies, but we also are business partners in a real estate, in a building. Matt used to be really heavy into the production, and now he's kind of stepped back and act as more of the executive producer, and is having a lot of success because he's one that works with a lot of the agencies. He'll go in, talk to creative, figure out the project. He'll bring in the various directors, and then he'll kind of go, great, my team's got it. He'll go to look for the next project while they're out on set, shooting a commercial. But it's catchy,
No, the system you have is like, it's the way you're supposed to do it. I think the way a lot of companies go about it is kind of the way we're going about it, where you start off as, the process is you start off as a freelancer, and then you start to get a lot of work, then you turn into a company, and then you slowly start hiring people to come to your projects, and then you start growing a bit. But I think most of the companies we know, like the people that are running the business, still go to the shoots, right? And I'm thinking like the reason for that, I guess, is because we like to be involved. We still have that, like, we love being on set. We love having like, almost like, you have like a power, almost like you're on set, you're the guy directing, you're the guy producing, you're the guy that's important, you're an important wheel in the car, right? But definitely, I think what a lot of people fail to see is probably that transition that they'll have to make. It's like, okay, now it's time for me to kind of take a step back and kind of just do more big picture stuff, which I think is a hard thing for some people to implement, and it's probably very hard for them to do as well.
And I guess it really depends on what your goals are. I mean, I know some guys that are creative and charge a lot of money for their services because they're amazing at what they do, and they love being on set, and they're artists, they're creatives, and they make a really good living, and yet they're still on set and they're creating the content because that's what they love to do. I'm personally, just for me, I'm more of a business guy, I'm more of an entrepreneur, and so I'm more about building the business and pulling the teams together to be able to figure out how to grow the business, less about the creative.
Being in business all these years, I'm just wondering, do you remember any key challenges that you faced over the years, and then how you overcame them?
Oh, there's so many challenges. I think that there's challenges when it comes to people. You know, finding, we've got some amazing people on our team. We've worked with some amazing people, but we've also had some people that have been challenges, that have maybe cost us some business, you know, that haven't really acted or put out the content that we expect for clients. So those are some of the big challenges that we've had, and not fun ones, right? So there's that. I think that even changing with the technology is a bit of a challenge, you know, even though we've made it through pretty well. It's you know, getting undercut from people when all the new technology started to come out, and getting undercut and trying to always prove your value to clients. You know, it's not a real challenge. It's just, it gets tiresome after a while, you know, when guys are coming in constantly. But that, you know, I complain, and then I'm going, you know what? Look at the restaurant business. I mean, there's 1,000 restaurants in Calgary. If you want to talk about competition, our competition isn't nearly as bad as, you know, the restaurant business and some of the other ones out there. So, but I don't know. I mean, overall, I love the business. I mean, when we stop and think about what we do for a living, we are pretty fortunate. You know, we go out and shoot videos and have fun and talk to people. And sure, it gets stressful like everything else, but I don't know. We're pretty fortunate.
Yeah, the one thing I really like about what we do is that we're always able to see all these different types of jobs that, you know, like it makes you think like, oh, okay, if I went in that industry, in that particular role, that's what my day would look like, right? It's always interesting to kind of like just see what other people do, you know? That's what I like.
The industries too. That's what I like seeing as well, because it's like we have like an idea of like what it might be like to work in certain industries, and then when we go behind the scenes and create the content for it, it's like, whoa, there's a lot more that goes into this than most people probably realize, right? Because they don't show as much sometimes, right?
Well, and I think the cool thing is too, is I mean, like you know, and I don't even think about it, but I mean, we've played a role in some pretty major companies and some major campaigns. You know, like I'm sitting at home sometimes watching a hockey game or watching the news, and I'll see 3 or 4 TV commercials that we've produced. You know, that we're helping influence, you know, buyers to go and, you know, go to a certain restaurant or buy a certain product or whatever. And it's just kind of interesting. It's fun to kind of get behind that and have that kind of influence on a market. I think it's pretty neat.
How did you feel the first time you saw one of your ads on like the big screen?
Well, you know what? It's funny because I started in the TV business back in the day when television and newspaper were like a really big deal. They're not such a big deal anymore. It was pretty neat, but yeah, the first couple of spots we did, and when you saw it on TV as a production company, and that would have been back, what, 1996, 97, was pretty cool, you know. And I was pretty young. I was, what, 27 when I started, 26, 27 years old. So to be able to sit back and go, wow, look at, you know, we're doing this stuff, and you know, we do a lot of photography work too. So, you know, as I flip through magazines, I'll see photos that we've done, and it's just, even today, you know, today it's still exciting to see stuff that we've done.
Yeah, we noticed one thing in your portfolio is that it wasn't just video that you guys do, but we saw that you also develop some websites as well occasionally. And now you're saying you also do a bit of photography. So is it kind of like a little bit of everything that you guys are doing, or is it still like mainly video and then occasionally you do other projects?
Yeah, and we kind of went down that path of being more of a visual communications agency about 5-6 years ago. But now, I mean, the bulk of it is straight up video. We do a fair amount of animation work, you know, explainers and whatnot, like you guys. And we do websites, but they generally are microsites or kind of video-centric websites. You know, we don't do just straight up websites.
Like landing page kind of type ones, right? Like those for video?
Yeah. Like we did one for Opa, which a Greek franchise out here, fast food restaurant, and it was kind of the power of good food. So it had a bunch of different video content on there, all kind of promoting the brand. So that's the type of thing that we'll do. But not, and again, it's all based around video type work.
I'm just wondering if you could go back in time, Like what? It's a cheesy question, but I actually am pretty curious because you seem like you're pretty much you sound and like you're at the peak of like your video career. So I'm just curious, if you could go back in time, what would you do? Like, is there anything you'd do differently? Like any, I don't know, anything?
I'm probably past the peak, but you know what? No, I wouldn't. I don't think I would. I mean, it's been a great business. I mean, I think you know, if anything, if we could have adapted more over the years so that we wouldn't have had to deal with layoffs because of the energy industry or COVID or anything like that, those are the situations that I would have done differently, because when you're impacting people's livelihoods, that's the stuff that sucks. But as for what we've done with the business, I would say I'm pretty proud of it. And I would say I have no regrets. You know, you make the best decision at the time, and to go back and say, oh, I should have or would have, or if I did, we started our company Jetstream Digital Media in 1999, right back when guys like Mark Cuban and we were around streaming before YouTube was around. So, you know, had I, would I have liked to have been the one that created a YouTube? Well, of course, but no, I got no regrets. It's been great, and I think it's exciting to see the content that's being produced out there. And one of the big things that I find it interesting though is that also that years ago we found a lot of our people wanted to leave our business to go and create movies or create more dramatic type material. I think nowadays what I'm finding is that people like us can take what would be traditionally boring corporate content and do some great storytelling around it and bring that skill set of great filmmaking to the corporate world. And I think that's what you're seeing more and more of. When you take a look at Vimeo and what some of the, producers and directors are doing on a Vimeo, I think that's what's exciting about the business, and hope to see more of that into the future.
Yeah, like I think for sure we are seeing a lot more that we're not, many of our peers maybe aren't going into films, but they are implementing those techniques and skills into the corporate world, and it's making the content a lot more interesting. It's like corporate content is no longer, I would say, it's no longer boring. Like I think everyone's kind of trying to outdo themselves with how creative they can make corporate videos.
Yeah. And it elevates the industry, it elevates the standard, of what is and what isn't good work. And it pushes all of us to do even better work. It's harder to do, a simple video these days, in terms of like very basic corporate, like we have to think about always like, oh, how do we make this stand out? What platform is it going on? So how can we film it in a way that makes it stand out from the rest, and this is where the video strategy comes into play, right? It's like, what can we do that works and lends itself to the strategy? So yeah, it's really interesting where it's going.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that I see it even more so into the future. I mean, when I started in the television business, you'd put tons of money into production work so that you could go and sell them a 30-second TV commercial to support it. And now I think with, the old term of branded entertainment, we're seeing more and more of that, where why don't these brands just start creating great content and sharing it with people, and you're starting to see that more product placement, but you're starting to see more brands getting involved with actually creating unique content, like a Red Bull. Everybody talks about a Red Bull, but it's brilliant. They know who their target audience is. They sell an energy drink, but they're also providing content for very, very targeted market. So if you could see even more of that, I think that's what the future holds, in my opinion.
Speaking of the future though, like what do you see happening in our industry going forward next, I don't know, 5-10 years? Because you've seen quite a lot of changes throughout the years, right?
You've seen it all,
Yeah.
technically.
Well, you know what? I think that I think it's just the storytelling is going to get better. I mean, I think you're going to start to see programs, you're already seeing things like the voiceover business, right? We used to have to hire a voice and go into a studio and record it, and we still do that sometimes. But now you got things like Voice 123, where you can go out to the world and get voice recordings, which also opens up the market for local voice talent to go around the world. I think you're going to see programs, kind of like what Canva's done for the graphic design space. I think you're going to start to see, and there's already programs out there that can start to do some automated editing for you. So I think there's going to be some of that technology out there that that will start to change the business and make it easier for the content. So I think the focus is going to go back onto that creative storytelling, you know, need that I don't think you can, not yet. Maybe 20 years down the road, 50 years down the road, the AI side of things will do it, but I don't think you can replace that creative minds behind. It goes back to my story of the photographer with the 35 mil camera. It's not the technology. I don't think we can have computers creating great content. I think that's what the future holds, is people like us continuing to get creative and be able to tell interesting stories, and then use the technology at hand to enhance it.
Yeah, the mediums are going to get better and better. Like, there's no doubt about that. I don't know how much of an accelerated growth that will be. You know, I don't know if it'll go as far as the digital, the DSLR revolution, you know, in terms of that type of, how do you say, if that big of a change, but it obviously will get better and better, you know, like how iPhones get better and better every year, you know. But as to what you said, storytelling, it's always going to be super important, and it's always going to be based on the strategy and the story behind the content that will make it important.
Okay, well, I think we're at the 1 hour mark, so I think let's just end it off there. I think that was a good way to close, tie things off. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you guys. I love what you're doing with this, and I think it's a great idea, and just opening it up and talking to different people. I totally appreciate what you guys are doing, so thanks for having me.
No worries, we appreciate that, and we're glad that you could join us, and you know, hopefully within another year or two, we'll check back in and see where you're at in another episode, right?
Perfect, guys.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.